Okay, AP Calculus, here is your weekend video assignment. First thing I'd like you to do is to make 6 graphs. Graph linear equations, because that's just straight lines. And number 1, I'd like you to graph a line with a slope of 1/5. Number 2, any line with a slope of 1. Number 3, a slope of 10. Number 4, a slope of -1/5. Number 5, a slope of -1. Number 6, a slope of -10. I'd like you to do these a specific way. So if you would do the first one with me, and then there'll be an opportunity to work at your own pace. So for number 1, we want to draw any line with a slope of 1/5. So you can just do this on your graph paper. I'm using bigger paper so you can see. So get your X and Y axis, and do use a ruler or a straight edge for this assignment, please. The side of your ID would work if you don't have a ruler at home. And you get to pick any points you want for this. So let's pick together for this one. I'm going to use the point X equals 2 and Y equals 3. And I'd like you to only label the axis with the points we're using. So don't label all the other numbers. So I'm going to start with a point at 2, 3. Now if you remember, the request was to make a line with a slope of 1/5. You probably remember that slope is rise over run. So that means we're going to need to rise 1 and run 5. So here's up 1 and then over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you'll plot your second point, and then connect your line. Again, I'd like you to use a straight edge for this assignment. There's my line. And I'd also like you to label the 2 points. So this point we already know was 2, 3. And then what would this one be? Well, we went up 1 and over 5, so this must be 7. So I have 7, and then this must be 4. Okay, and if you weren't sure, you could always just count it. So you'll also need to remember y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 as your slope formula. So I'd like you to write next to the slope. So you're going to write this on your graph, the m equals 1/5. Then next to that, I'd like you to write how you would have used the y2 minus y1 formula. So y2 is 4 minus y1 is 3 over x2 minus x1, so that's 7 minus 2. So I'm just using the slope formula. And of course that equals 1/5. And then I want you to also write that this equals the change in y over the change in x. So in calculus, we're going to use this delta symbol every now and then. It's the Greek letter delta, looks like a triangle, and it means change. So change in y over change in x. And I'd like you to write this for every graph that you do. And write the change in y over change in x for each graph also. Then the last thing I'd like you to do in your graph is actually label the change in y and the change in x. So our y went from 3 to 4. Therefore this is our change in y. And if you can't see what I wrote there, I wrote the delta y. And I made it between 3 and 4. Then our delta x, our change in x, came between 2 and 7. So there's our change in x. So all slope is the change in y over the change in x. So y went up 1, so you have a positive 1, and x went over 5, so you have a positive 5. Okay, so 1/5. Okay, so that was number 1. What I'll do at the end of the video is I will show you all the graphs kind of quickly so you can just check your work. However, if you'd like me to go through each one with you right now, you can just keep watching. So you can either turn off the video now and do the work and check it at the end, or you can do each one individually with me. So I'm going to do number 2 now. So graph 2 requested that you graph a slope of 1. So let's do this together. I'm going to pick, let's see, I'll pick -3 for my first point. And how about -3, 5? And then I'm just going to draw a line with a slope of 1. Oh, I need to put one more point. Here we go. So I go up 1 over 1. That's what a slope of 1 means. And I'll draw that line right now. Just by connecting those dots. Whenever you draw a line with a slope of 1, make sure it lines up with every square on your page. There we go. Put your arrows at the end. And now we'll mark the other 2 points. So this point is at -2 and 6 because I went up 1 over 1. And so that means this is -3, 5, and the second point is -2, 6. So our slope was 1, and if we did the y2 minus y1, it would be 6 minus 5 over -2, because that's x2, minus -3, because those both become positive, and we get 1 over 1, and that equals change in y over change in x. And the next step is to label that change in y and label the change in x. So here's where y changes. And here's where x changes. So I made a delta y here and a delta x here. So if you just use this formula, change in y over change in x, you could easily see that y changed by going up 1 and x changed by going 1. And by the way, we always read the x's from left to right. So we're going to always have x be positive. So x moved over 1 and y moved up 1. Okay, so that was number 2. Number 3 is a slope of 10. And let's start at +3 this time. And let's start at +1. Actually, let's start at -2. There we go, so I'm sure that I have room. So start at 3, -2. Now slope of 10 would be up 10 over 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then over 1. So there's my next point. So by the way, that would be 4, and this would be y equals 8. Right, I can actually physically count where that point is. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. And of course the next step is to connect your dots. And let's write all those things in that we were supposed to write. M equals 10. Oh, we forgot to write our coordinates. So this is 3, -2. This is 4, 8. And if we did our y2 minus y1, we'd have 8 minus -2 over 4 minus 3. Of course, a minus a negative, change. So that's 10 over 1, and that equals the change in y over the change in x. So let's mark our change in y and our change in x. Our change in y went all the way from -2 to 8. And our change in x, kind of hard to fit in here, went from 3 to 4. There's our change in y and our change in x. Okay, and you can figure out slope that way too. You can see that y changed by 10. Okay, and y increased, so that's positive 10, and x moved by 1. Okay, that was number 3. Let's do number 4.